Namaste. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this series of discussions on subject psychoanalysis and Diagnostic Statistical Manual DSM-5. In this series, we will have discussion with our subject expert, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya, who is deeply interested in psychoanalysis and has been a consultant, a teacher, a therapist, and a supervisor. He has written 7 books in areas of psychoanalysis, management, and Hinduism. We shall be exploring here how psychoanalysis and DSM-5 are related and why is it so important to study and discuss this area from standpoint of academics and practice. Can we start by asking, what is it all about? What does the topic psychoanalysis and DSM-5 mean? And how is it so important in current times?
Psychological health is one of the most important areas of life today, and we have two broad approaches to deal with this area. The approach of psychiatry, where DSM-5 comes in, and the approach of psychotherapy, where psychoanalysis comes in. And till today, they have been going on almost like two parallel areas, two parallel lines. There is one line of psychiatry which is biochemical in nature, and there is one line which is more based upon what we call the human experience. Because there is no bridge between the two at present, which used to be there at some time when we had DSM-1 and DSM-2. And because these two things are both these approaches are very important for psychological health of people, for humanity as a whole, but there is little bridge between the two today, little communication, almost running like two parallel lines. There is a necessity to create a bridge. And this is what this series plans to do, to create a bridge of language, to create a bridge of concepts, to create a bridge of pathogenesis, to create a bridge of treatment, and to create a bridge so that ultimately a grand synthesis between the two parallel lines can be achieved, or at least started off, which is the goal of the next 25 years of the area of psychological health.
So, has there been a historical link between psychoanalysis and DSM-5 of current times?
Good question. In fact, it's very interesting to go into the history of the two and the history of connection between the two. Psychoanalysis has a history of about 150 years, and not psychiatry, but DSM-5 has a history of about 50 to 70 years. And if we look into the history of DSM, the way it has evolved from DSM-1 to DSM-5 today, DSM-1 and DSM-2 were heavily influenced by psychoanalysis. DSM-3 onwards, they started a movement towards making DSM a theoretical, meaning sort of theory neutral. And DSM-4 was completely a theoretical, which was neither tilting towards psychiatry nor tilting towards psychoanalysis or psychotherapy. DSM-5, there are different opinions. Most people claim it is still a theoretical, but many do say it is tilting towards a neuropharmacological view of psychological sickness. So there has been a history of psychoanalysis, there has been a history of DSM, and there has been a history of connection between the two. At present, because over the years, psychoanalysis has been in a sort of decline, and students of psychiatry don't learn much of psychoanalysis. People don't even realize, particularly psychiatrists who are coming out of their institutes after the year 2000 in many parts of the world, don't even realize the significance or the availability of psychoanalytic explanations and modes of healing with regard to the sicknesses described in DSM-5. And this is a very unfortunate situation.
So, what are the core ideas and concepts in this regard?
DSM-5 is based upon clinical observation, classification, statistics, and averages, and also a bit of cultural background. And psychoanalysis is based upon the whole idea of early life causality. DSM neither talks about causality nor about treatment. It talks about observational clinical facts as they come out in empirical studies. So the two in a way are different, but the two in a way can be put together. For example, if we look at DSM-5, we find about uh, 14 to 16 chapters, out of which there are about 12 chapters where they describe the sicknesses which can be explained and treated by psychotherapy or by psychoanalysis. And when we take up each of the sicknesses, uh, let us take, for example, the two different sicknesses, three different sicknesses given in DSM-5. One sickness of generalized anxiety disorder, which will be in the chapter on anxiety. One sickness which will be like erectile dysfunction, which will be in the chapter of sexual disorders. And one sickness which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which again will be in a separate chapter of obsessive compulsive disorder. If you look psychoanalytically into all the three, the explanation can be a single explanation for all the three. Right? So Sigmund Freud from psychoanalytic area would say that all of the three have to do with unresolved Oedipus complex. Right? Klein would say it is unresolved paranoid schizoid split, which is generating anxiety. Kohut might say it is the disintegration of the self, which is generating anxiety. Jung might say it is inability to get into the hero archetype, the hunter archetype, the family man archetype, the adulthood, and one is fixated in the child archetype. So different people will give different explanations, but if you look at it, you will see three sicknesses given in three chapters, separate chapters of DSM-5 will have a single explanation within one school of psychoanalysis. So if you were to create a sort of DSM based upon psychoanalysis, instead of uh, uh, 150 to 200 sicknesses which are described at present, you will actually reduce it down to not more than 25 to 50 different explanations. So the two are very different, and yet the two can be brought together. And when we talk about bringing them together, let us take one example. One single sickness described in DSM, right, will have at least 7 different explanations within the psychoanalytic schools. Right? So you will have one Freudian explanation, Jungian explanation, Kleinian explanation, and so on. And outside of psychoanalysis, you will have a CBT explanation, a DBT explanation, and so on and so forth. And even if you go further, in holistic healing, you will have an energy explanation, right? In Reiki and pranic healing, and you might have a different explanation in Ayurveda and a different explanation in homeopathy. So a single sickness will have multiple explanations, and it depends upon experts from various areas to come together and create a list of all explanations available for a single disease. Because our practice tells us this simple and common principle of healing, that everything works on someone and nothing works on everyone. Okay? So there will be a group of people suffering from same disease who are helped more by psychiatry, another group which is helped more by psychotherapy, psychoanalytic psychotherapy, another group helped more by CBT, and so on. So something works, right, on everyone. Nothing works on everyone. Everything works on someone. Right? So this principle that everything works on someone and nothing works on everyone brings us to this point that we should have a ready resource of knowledge, where we should have a psychoanalytic explanation of all DSM sicknesses, a CBT explanation of all DSM sicknesses, a holistic healing explanation of all DSM sicknesses, and then slowly, if we can, put them together so that in a kind of a technology enabled format, we can have all possible explanations that we have for one particular sickness, and then we can pick and choose based upon the patient and the pathology and intensity what is most likely to work, right? And thereby reduce the time of healing and the time of suffering.
Quite interesting having multiple schools just in psychoanalysis. Like, if we bring it to something very specific, say, how exactly can we apply this line of thinking for any given specific problem, say, generalized anxiety disorder?
It's a good question. Let us apply this thinking and do it in specifics. Let us take up generalized anxiety disorder. So the explanation in psychiatry would be that the some part of the nervous system is hyperactive. In fight and flight mode, some biochemicals are being secreted in excess, right? And therefore the problem. Let us come to psychoanalysis of the same problem. The psychoanalytic causality will be not one, but at least 6 to 7 different options we will have. The Freudian school will say it may be because of unresolved Oedipus complex. That generalized anxiety disorder is there. The Kleinian school will say it is because of unbridged, unresolved paranoid schizoid split which is still open. The Jungian school might say the predator archetype is overactive and you are fixated in that archetype without adequate resources of the warrior or the prince or the king. The uh, Winnicottian school would say that because of absence of good enough mothering, you could not generate those balancing, soothing mechanisms to really deal with anxiety. Cohutians will say it is because of development of an unhealthy self that you are not able to uh, have strong enough defense mechanisms to really control and defend against this anxiety. So it's a disintegration of the self or the presence of an unhealthy self which is responsible for GAD. And somebody from ISTDP school will say that it is the murderous or the torturous rage towards the parents or unresolved pain, anger, or guilt towards somebody that is causing this anxiety because you are afraid that those feelings of anger, pain, or guilt will rise to the surface, and the anxiety is like a cover, a signal anxiety as they call it. So you will see they will give this explanation for GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. So within the psychoanalytic psychotherapy arcade itself, you have the 7 different explanations of this, okay? And different explanations will apply to different people, right? So if you have 100 patients of GAD, maybe for 20 the Freudian explanation applies and works. Maybe for another 20 Jungian might work. So it is, we come back to the same thing. Everything works on someone and nothing works on everyone. Right? So this kind of thing is there. Now let us say there will be people for whom more than one explanation also will work. And this brings us to the rich source, rich collection of causalities that each school offers us a causality. And based upon the causality, you always have a treatment plan. The treatment plan always is a function of pathogenesis and causality. So the way we heal is naturally a function of our understanding of how it started and how it developed. So a healing plan always is a function of the pathogenesis. Right? Now, when we have 7 different options, it offers us a very rich reservoir of knowledge, right, to choose from, and we can, based upon our reading of the patient, choose upon something. And then, because we choose the right thing, we don't dabble into all possibilities and waste time and extend the suffering of the patient. So if we have this bridge of psychoanalysis and DSM, where we have 5 to 7 psychoanalytic explanations of every psychiatric disease described in DSM, at least the 12 chapters that I referred to, right? It will be of great help to therapists to shorten the time, shorten the suffering, shorten the cost, and it will be of great benefit to the patients. So this is the way we can apply it.
It's quite vast and deep, but somewhere
Yeah.
we talk about multiple schools, multiple therapies, multiple thoughts. How do you think the other areas like CBT, DBT, ISTDB will connect with each other and psychoanalysis in the light of our discussion today?
It's a complicated question and a question of future, but it's a very interesting question. Uh, what is happening is that, uh, ideally speaking, we should have uh, a book which talks about the psychoanalytic explanations and treatments of all sicknesses mentioned in DSM. So we should have a book called Psychoanalysis and DSM-5 as a ready reference for everyone. Similarly, we should have a book called CBT and DSM-5 and a book called Holistic Healing and DSM-5. And this would provide everyone in this area with a rich reservoir of reference and knowledge. And all honest therapists, if they find that what they are trained into is not the real explanation and the methods of healing they know are not the best for their patients, they can also refer the patients to the person they think is best suited given the pathology of that person. So this is one response to what you say, that one way that all of them can come together is all of them have this kind of books, and then we integrate them all into one holistic healing compendium, which says integrated healing and DSM-5 or holistic healing and DSM-5, right? Where everything is just listed out in a technologically friendly way, right? A searchable database, right? Which can actually be used for empirical analysis also, right? As we go along, as a more enabling research tool. So this is one way in which, systematically speaking, all of them can come together. Now, what is practically happening is something else. This kind of work has not happened conceptually, but what is practically happening is something very interesting. The patients have got ahead of the healers. So while the healers may not be so much into uh, the integration process, the patients already are into it. Often with the knowledge of the healer, often hiding it from the healer, patients are going in for multiple schools, multiple therapies, and so on. The person taking psychiatric pills often goes for psychotherapy, also at times goes for acupressure, acupuncture, or something else. So the patients have started holistic healing much before uh, practitioners can uh, openly and officially accept and practice holistic healing. So it's already on, without the consent at times, and without the cooperation at times, and without the practice at times of the practitioner. The third response to this interesting question is this. Uh, Integration at one level in practice already is happening, and there are three aspects to it. One is uh, acknowledgement, right? That we are using tools of some other school. So psychoanalytic psychotherapist might be using some tools of CBT without knowing or acknowledging it. Right? So in this sense, that without acknowledgement, something is already getting integrated in practice. Second is this uh, idea that ultimately in the realm of psychotherapy, we only have three things to deal with: thought, affect, and behavior or action. Right? And if you go into holistic healing, then you have two more elements of energy and karma. But in the secular domain, the Western domain of psychotherapy, in the classical domain, we have only three things of thought, emotion, and action or behavior. And essentially, we are using all the three in some way or the other. We only have vantage point in one, but we are all using all the three in different proportions. So some sort of integration already is there in practice without us acknowledging that. Right? The third element of integration is what is coming up now in terms of what is called as the, the transformational states, right? Or to put it even more better, integrative transformational states, where the idea is that in certain states of the mind, it is easy to bring about change and transformation for healing than in other states of the mind. So it is less to do with the technique of transformation, more to do with the state of mind of the recipient. Right? And when we go into this kind of thinking, we look at two therapies, hypnotherapy and ISTDP. Both of them use some distinct uh, transformational states where they believe transformation is easy. So both of them induce specific states of mind in which the transformation is easy. And then within, once those states of minds are achieved, are brought about in the recipient, the patient, then they use tools from different schools. So the integration there happens in the light of one transformational state being induced in the patient. And while that state is on, you use tools from all the therapies to bring about change. Hypnotherapy uses the state of trance, right? So if you look at present day hypnotherapy, they induce a state of trance which they think is highly conducive for change towards healing. And once that state is achieved in the patient, brought about in the patient, they use tools of CBT, DBT, REBT, psychoanalysis, ISTDP, and all those tools in the background of that trance state being existent in the patient. ISTDP brings a second kind of state which is brought about by what they call as uh, transformative crisis. So they induce a crisis in the mind of the person for the sake of healing, which is brought about by removing the thinking process as far as possible and removing the defenses as far as possible. And this brings about a highly receptive state, receptive to change and receptive to expression of affect. And in that state, the tools of CBT, DBT, REBT, psychoanalysis, all the tools are used once this state is achieved. And often you use the tools even to bring about this state while you are doing what they call defense work to bring about this artificial crisis for healing. Psychodrama uses the same kind of concept where they induce certain states in the mind by doing a psychodrama, and once the patient is in that state, they use tools of all these tools. So this is the third state in which integration is happening, right? Where the easy to heal transformational states are being used as a background, and in the context of that canvas, in the background, tools from different schools are being used. Now, when we bring the same uh, idea to our discussion, right, we can actually take up each sickness, right? And we can think of also in this line that if we were to use any transformational state, what tools can be put together for healing each specific sickness. And if we reduce the discussion to a narrow scope, we can say, how can we use psychoanalytic insights to heal each of the sicknesses? Right? And there again, we will be looking at two things, the psychoanalytic concepts and the psychoanalytic technique, because within psychoanalysis, you not only have competing causality, but you also have competing techniques. Right? The Freudian technique is slightly different from the Kleinian technique, is very radically different from the Jungian technique, is different from the ISTDP technique. Right? So when we deal with the healing part, when we try to bring these two together, psychoanalysis and DSM-5, for each sickness, we will have competing theories, concepts on causality, competing concepts on development of disease pathogenesis, and competing concepts on the treatment plan, which will include both the type of therapy to be used, number of sessions to be used, and the way sessions ought to be conducted.
So it's like more of a symbiotic association of different schools under one light. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
But when it comes to coming to global mental health, how do you believe that the Eastern and Western thoughts would converge at this point where we are discussing?
I think there is, we are in very exciting times because after the maturing of the New Age movement, we are into times where the East and the West are coming together scientifically. Right? So when we talk about the East and the West coming together, one level of them coming together is conceptually. And the second level of their coming together is scientifically. And at both levels, work is happening. And this also has a bearing upon our discussion of psychoanalysis and DSM-5. Because at some level, integration between psychoanalysis and the Eastern thought also has started. At another level, integration between psychoanalysis and neurology also has started. So we have reached a level in neurology where psychoanalytic phenomena, some of them, not all of them, we can at least start to study them from neurological standpoint. And these are very exciting times because at one level, there is integration between neurology, psychiatry, psychoanalysis, and other forms of Western psychotherapy. At another level, there is integration between West and East. Right? And when we talk of the integration of West and East, the fundamental difference is in the worldview, the philosophy of reality. Right? And the philosophy of reality is different between East and West in terms of the origin of reality, the construction of reality, and the purpose of reality. And once we come down from this philosophy into science and into therapy, the differences persist because of the difference in terms of thinking, in terms of origin, construction, and purpose. For example, in the Eastern thought, it is not only the psychotherapy playground is not only a playground of thought, emotion, and action, which is the case with Western thinking. For the East, two more elements are added, the element of energy and the element of karma. Because the philosophical thinking is different. And therefore, when we talk of healing in the Eastern sense, we are looking at healing which can be approached from the point of view of action, the behavioral therapy kind of approach. The approach from thought, the CBT, DBT, REBT kind of approach. The approach of affect or emotion, the psychoanalysis, ISTDP, experiential therapy kind of approach. And to add to it, you have areas like acupressure, acupuncture, Reiki, and pranic healing, which approach it from energy point of view. And then we have the karmic school, spiritual school, like some of the Buddhist meditations, Osho meditations, the use of mantra, the use of visualization, the use of yagna, the use of idol worship, and so on. So the canvas of causality and the canvas of healing modalities available is much wider in the East than in the West, and all of it is not empirical. Much of it is yet to be empirically studied, and therefore is a issue of faith for the present, or issue of subjective experience for those who have it at the present. Right? And when the two of them come together, right? In some parts they have come together. For example, meditation. Meditation is no longer Eastern in the classical sense. Today it is a part of allopathy because it has been very rigorously studied by neurology and by physiology areas. So today it has become, after study of 25 years, we started off from Menninger Foundation studies of Swami Rama, right? Trying to study neurologically and physiologically the Eastern yoga and the meditation concepts. And today we are at a stage where exhaustive studies from physiology and neurology standpoint have been done of many meditative techniques, and also their effect on mental health and in healing of many diseases. So those are the areas which now are enough studied from empirical and allopathy standpoint, and therefore that integration already is on. Right? Many people are using, apart from psychiatry and psychotherapy, also Reiki and pranic healing for benefit of their patients. Many people are using Ayurvedic prescriptions in terms of diet. So this East and the West, the use of Ayurvedic diet, the use of Ayurvedic herbs, the use of meditation, the use of acupressure, acupuncture, Reiki, pranic healing, Tai Chi, all of this is going on. And when we bring, it's very interesting times we are in, that we are now at a point where we will be able to study soon, scientifically, many of these schools, which otherwise were the domain of those who were experts or masters and were subjective truths relevant and specific to them, but were not open to objective inquiry, which today they are open to. And this brings another area, another dimension to our subject of psychoanalysis and DSM-5, that when we do a psychoanalytic analysis in terms of causality and treatment plan for one specific sickness given in DSM-5, we can actually give uh, two kinds of causality and treatment plans. One is pure psychoanalytic, which will still have multiple school options, but it will still be psychoanalytic.
Mhm.
And the second will be holistic, where we combine all the schools of psychoanalysis with the Eastern schools. And that will create a really holistic package of understanding a sickness and healing the sickness. That is how I think the East and the West coming together, we are at a very interesting time. And it has even more relevance and uh, utility for our subject and our purpose of combining psychoanalysis and DSM-5,
Mm.
and to provide more knowledge uh, on causality, pathogenesis, and healing treatment plan for each sickness given in DSM-5 outside of psychiatry.
So, if we talk about holistic healing, that's what I think you're pointing at. How can it get connected to our discussion of psychoanalysis with DSM-5?
Let us take an example which we were discussing, generalized anxiety disorder, right? So from a psychiatry point of view, you give some pills to the person. You can also ask the person to keep some pills ready with him in case of a panic attack. That's what most
Mhm.
psychiatrists would do.
Mhm.
So there would be a regular medicine and there would be an emergency medicine given to the patient.
Mhm.
The same sickness, let us say, we view from psychoanalytic standpoint, right? And we come to realize that, let us say, for a particular person, out of all competing psychoanalytic explanations, say the Kleinian explanation fits very well, right? And we believe that it is because of the attack of the bad breast that the anxiety is being produced as a symptom. Right? Uh, if we bring in the holistic healing also, so
Mhm.
if we don't bring in the holistic healing, then we would just offer the person Kleinian psychotherapy, right? Kleinian psychoanalytic psychotherapy for his problem, given our assessment of the causality and pathogenesis of his anxiety. If we bring in the element of Eastern holistic healing or the Eastern thought, right? If we were to take the holistic approach, we can also offer the person some relaxing music tapes. We can offer the person certain exercises in pranic healing, right? Certain respiration techniques, pranayam techniques, yoga techniques, right? Certain types of foods which help in control of that anxiety. Right? So instead of offering, if it go only by psychiatry, we are offering only pills. If we go by psychiatry and psychoanalysis, we are offering pills plus an option of psychoanalytic psychotherapy of different types, one or more of which in combination may be of use to the patient. If we bring in non-psychoanalytic schools, we may be offering certain exercises from CBT or DBT. And if we bring in holistic healing, we may be offering some relaxation techniques, some meditation techniques, some music therapy, some art therapy, right? The entire comprehensive package can be offered to the person, and the healing process can be enriched. It can be made more comprehensive. It can be shortened in terms of time. It can be made more compatible to the personality of the patient and reduce his suffering, his cost, and his time. So that holistic healing, once you bring in, it makes healing process more comprehensive and more effective.
So, how do you see the future of psychological healing evolving given all that of human minds we have talked about?
Uh, I would see future as evolving into an integration uh, within the schools of psychoanalysis. One, two, integration within schools outside of psychoanalysis. Three, integration of the two psychoanalytic and non-psychoanalytically oriented schools within psychotherapy, Western psychotherapy. Four, integration of psychotherapy approaches of West and East. And five, integration of this whole with our understanding of neurology and psychiatry. And this, I think, is a very large project of future of holistic healing, which is scientific. And this, I think, is the work of the next 25 years, that the healing will become more holistic, right? And we will understand more and more of scientifically of what we have not understood till now. And we have put that in the area of faith or new age or something else. Okay? And we will be able to separate the substance from the fantasy part of the East, because the East also has a mixture of real substance and fantasy. We can't deny that fact. And that has to be separated by using the scientific method. So I think we will be seeing an integration uh, at various levels in the coming future, and we will be moving more towards holistic healing. And I think patients have already done so ahead of us, ahead of the professional community. They already are into holistic healing with or without the knowledge of the professionals. One idea also, I think, which needs a mention is this whole idea of uh, traditional healing knowledge in the area of mental health, the shamanic knowledge, the tribal knowledge, the indigenous knowledge of healing both in biological health and mental health. So that area also needs a mention and integration, incorporation, and scientific study. And one more area is the area of hallucinogens, because many people who have tried hallucinogens say that it induces a state of mind where the hallucinogen acts like a telescope for psychology. Right? What telescope? I mean, it acts like something like telescope, inner telescope for psychology, and it can become for psychology what telescope has become for astronomy in the outer world. So I think when we talk of integration, apart from all that we have said, there also will be integration of traditional knowledge, shamanic practices, uh, uh, the integration of hallucinogenic substances, which already has a mention in Ayurveda, but has not been practiced for long, and all of this and homeopathy. I think this, all this put together is like these are the components which will go into one holistic whole. Maybe some more components will come in which we don't have knowledge of, but this kind of an integration seems to be the way forward. And in that journey, our discussion on psychoanalysis and DSM-5 is one small contribution and one small component of that grand synthesis.
And today we have covered a lot of ground in discussing the topic right from the history, present times, and future of psychoanalysis with regard to DSM-5. Thank you so much, Himanshu Vaidyaji, for sharing with us your deep knowledge in the area. And thank you everyone for watching this video. If you find this video interesting, you can subscribe to our channel for our coming episodes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.